Ingot right now can be fully restored for less than the price of a coffee. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how Azo works, and you'll never look at a broken piece of furniture the same way again. This table came from a house clearance in Yorkshire. Solid oak, dovetailed drawer, turned legs, the kind of joinery you simply don't find in flat pack furniture anymore. But one leg had split clean through at the joint, the surface was covered in white water rings, and there was a patch near the edge where the veneer had lifted and curled like old wallpaper. To most people, that's a write-off. To anyone who understands wood, that's an afternoon's work and about 3 pounds of materials. That's really the heart of this channel and the heart of this video. We've become a society that replaces things instead of repairing them. Furniture manufacturers have leaned into that. Modern flat pack pieces are built from chipboard and glue, designed to be thrown away, not restored, but real, solid timber furniture, the sort your grandparents owned, was built to last generations. And it was built to be repaired. The skills to do that repair aren't secret. They're just not taught anymore. So today, we're going to walk through this entire restoration, start to finish. I'll show you how to inspect a damaged table properly, how to diagnose exactly what's wrong with it, and then how to fix every single issue. The cracked joint, the water damage, the lifted veneer, the dull, tired finish, using basic tools and a small handful of cheap materials. If you've got an old table, chair, or cabinet sitting in a shed or a garage because it's too far gone, stick with me. It probably isn't. Before we pick up a single tool, it's worth understanding why furniture breaks down in the first place, because that tells you how to fix it properly rather than just papering over the cracks. Wood is a natural material, and it behaves like one. It expands and contracts with humidity, it dries out over decades, and the joints holding it together rely on animal or synthetic glues that eventually fail. A table leg doesn't usually snap because someone kicked it. It fails because the glue in the joint has dried, shrunk, and let go, and then normal use finally puts it past breaking point. And water rings happen because moisture gets past the finish and into the wood fibers underneath, clouding them. Veneer lifts because the thin layer of decorative wood on top loses its bond with the base timber below, often from heat, moisture, or age. None of that means the wood itself is ruined. In almost every case, the timber underneath is still perfectly sound. It's the joints, the surface, and the finish that have failed, not the wood. That distinction matters because it's exactly why restoration works. You're not fighting the material, you're repairing the connections and refreshing the surface. People replace furniture instead of restoring it mainly because they don't know where to start and because a wobbly table looks intimidating. But the actual process is logical, step by step, and forgiving. You don't need a workshop full of specialist tools. You need patience, the right basic materials, and an understanding of what you're looking at. Every good restoration starts with a proper inspection, not a glance, but a genuine hands-on assessment. Rushing this stage is the single biggest mistake people make, because if you don't understand what's actually wrong, you end up treating the symptom instead of the cause. Start by running your hands over every surface. You're feeling for texture changes, rough patches where the finish has broken down, soft spots that might indicate rot, and any lifted or bubbled areas in the veneer. On our table, the top felt smooth, except for a slightly raised patch near the corner about the size of a playing card. That's classic lifted veneer, The surface layer has separated from the timber underneath, but hasn't cracked or gone missing, which is good news, because it means it can be reglued rather than replaced. Next, check every joint. Grip the tabletop and gently rock it. Not hard, just enough to feel movement. Any looseness tells you a joint has failed somewhere. Then get down and look underneath. On this table, one back leg had a visible crack running along the grain right where it met the rail, and the whole joint had separated slightly, leaving a hairline gap you could just see daylight through. Look closely for cracks specifically along the grain, because that's usually a sign of the wood drying out and shrinking, rather than impact damage. A crack running across the grain is more likely to be a genuine structural break, and that changes how you'll approach the repair. Check the finish itself. Water rings show up as cloudy white or gray patches, usually circular, where a glass or hot mug sat too long. This is moisture trapped under the finish layer, and it's one of the most common and most fixable issues on any wood surface. Scratches are usually only in the finish, not the wood itself, and you can tell the difference by running a fingernail across them. If your nail catches, it's gone through into the timber. Finally, check for rot, which is the one issue that genuinely can turn a repair into a replacement job if it's severe. Press a screwdriver gently into any suspicious dark or soft area. Sound wood resists, rotten wood gives way and crumbles. On this table, thankfully, there was none just surface damage and one structural joint failure, which is an incredibly common combination and entirely repairable. By the end of a proper inspection, you should have a clear list. On ours, a cracked separated leg joint, water ring staining on the tabletop, one section of lifted veneer, and a dull, worn finish across the whole surface. 4 separate issues, each with its own fix, none of them requiring anything expensive. This is where people are usually surprised. You do not need a full woodworking workshop to do this properly. For tools, you'll want a soft cloth, fine and medium grit sandpaper, 120 and 220 grit cover most jobs, a scraper or old credit card for applying filler, a clamp or two, even a ratchet strap or old belt will work in a pinch, a small syringe or thin nozzle for injecting glue into tight joints, and a soft brush for applying finish. If you already own basic DIY tools, you likely have most of this already. For materials, this is where the 3 pounds figure comes from. A tube of wood glue costs around £1 and lasts for dozens of repairs, so the actual amount used here is pennies. Wood filler, again, a small tin lasts a long time. A few pence worth for one repair. Fine steel wool or an extra sheet of sandpaper for buffing, and for the finish, a small amount of oil or wax. Many people already have some form of furniture polish or oil at home, but even buying a small tin fresh costs very little, and again, one tin will restore many pieces of furniture, not just one. The real cost of this table's repair, materials actually consumed, genuinely does come in under £3. The tools, if you don't already own them, are a one-time investment that will pay for itself the very next time something in your house needs fixing rather than replacing. A quick safety note before we move on. Always work in a ventilated space when sanding or applying finish. Wear a basic dust mask when sanding, especially old finishes which may contain materials you don't want to breathe in. And if you're ever dealing with a genuinely old antique, Joiro, pre-1960s in particular, Iororo, be cautious, because older paints occasionally contain lead. If in doubt, a simple test kit from a hardware shop will tell you for certain before you start sanding. Every restoration starts with cleaning, and it's tempting to skip straight past this step, but it changes everything about how the rest of the job goes. Wipe the entire piece down with a slightly damp cloth to remove surface dust and grime. Then, if there's a buildup of old wax or polish, a mild solution of warm water and a small amount of washing up liquid will lift most of it. Dry it thoroughly afterwards. You'd be amazed how much of what looks like damage is actually just decades of grime sitting on top of a perfectly good surface. On our table, cleaning alone lightened the overall color noticeably and made the water ring stains and the lifted veneer patch far easier to see clearly, which made planning the rest of the job much simpler. For areas that need repair work, rather than the whole table necessarily, you'll want to remove the old finish down to bare wood. This can be done with fine sandpaper for smaller areas, working in the direction of the grain, never against it. Sanding against the grain leaves scratches that are far more visible once you apply a new finish. So this is one of those small details that separates an amateur job from a professional-looking one. For our table, I focused the finish removal specifically around the water ring stains and the repaired joint area, rather than stripping the entire top, because the surrounding original finish was still in reasonably good condition. This is a professional trick worth remembering. You don't always need to strip everything back. Blend your repair into the existing finish wherever you can, and you'll save yourself hours of work. This was the main structural repair on our table, and it's representative of the most common table repair there is a loose or cracked leg joint. First, the joint needs to be gently worked apart, just enough to get glue into it. You're not trying to fully disassemble the table, just open the crack slightly. Using a small brush or the syringe, work wood glue into the crack and into the joint itself, making sure it coats both surfaces that will be pressed back together. Then bring the joint back together and clamp it. This is where patience matters most. Wood glue needs even sustained pressure while it cures, typically for a minimum of 30 minutes for an initial set, though leaving it clamped overnight gives the strongest possible bond. A common mistake here is not using enough glue, or not clamping evenly, which leaves weak spots in the joint that will fail again down the line. Another common mistake is rushing the clamping time because the table feels solid after 10 minutes. It isn't fully cured, and loading weight onto it too soon can undo the whole repair. For anyone whose damage is more severe, a genuine structural crack rather than a separated joint, this is where epoxy comes into its own rather than standard wood glue. Wood glue is excellent for clean joints where two glued surfaces meet closely. Epoxy is the better choice when you've got gaps to fill, when the break is under more stress, or when you need something that will also add structural strength while filling a void, because epoxy can be built up and shaped in a way that standard glue can't. As a simple rule, tight joints use wood glue, gaps, structural cracks, or missing material, use epoxy. Once the joint had cured, there was a small amount of surface gap right where the crack had originally been, plus the area where the veneer had lifted needed attention too. For the veneer, the fix is simpler than people expect. Rather than replacing it, you gently work a small amount of wood glue underneath the lifted section using a thin applicator, then press it back down firmly, wiping away any excess glue that squeezes out immediately with a damp cloth before it cures. Clamp it flat, or weigh it down evenly with something heavy and flat, and leave it to cure fully. When it's done properly, that lifted veneer becomes essentially invisible once refinished. For the small remaining gap at the joint, wood filler is the right tool. Apply it with a scraper or an old credit card, slightly overfilling the area since it will shrink very slightly as it dries. Then, once fully cured, sand it back flush with the surrounding surface using fine grit sandpaper. Sanding is where a repair either starts to disappear into the piece or stands out like a scar, and grit choice matters enormously here. Start with a medium grit, around 120, to level any filler or repaired areas flush with the surrounding wood. Then move to a finer grit, 220, to smooth everything and prepare the surface for finishing. Always sand with the grain, and always work through the grits in order rather than jumping straight to fine paper, because skipping grits leaves deeper scratches from the coarser paper that the finer paper won't remove. Where the old finish had been removed and repairs made, the bare wood will look lighter and different from the surrounding original surface. A small amount of wood stain, tested first on an offcut or hidden area, lets you match the repaired section to the rest of the table. Apply it with a cloth, working with the grain, and build the color gradually rather than trying to match it in one heavy coat of bound. It's far easier to deepen a color than to lighten one that's gone too dark. Once the color is matched and everything is fully dry, it's time to seal and protect the surface. This is where you choose between oil and wax, or in some cases varnish, and the right choice depends on how the piece will be used. For a dining or coffee table that will see regular use, drinks, and daily wear, a hard-wearing oil finish, such as Danish oil, penetrates into the wood and provides good protection while remaining easy to top up in future if it wears down. Wax gives a beautiful, soft, traditional sheen and is wonderfully easy to apply, but it offers less protection against heat and moisture, so it suits lower-use decorative pieces better than an everyday dining table. For furniture that will live outdoors or somewhere with high humidity, a proper exterior varnish rated for outdoor use is worth the extra cost, because standard indoor finishes will fail quickly outside. Apply your chosen finish in thin, even coats, always with the grain, allowing full drying time between coats, as directed on the tin. 2 to 3 thin coats will almost always outperform 1 thick coat, both in appearance and durability. Once the final coat is fully cured, a light buff with fine steel wool or a soft cloth brings out the sheen and removes any tiny imperfections in the finish, leaving a smooth, even surface that genuinely looks and feels professionally restored. A few things worth remembering for your own projects, beyond this specific table. Prevention matters as much as repair. Use coasters and placemats to stop new water rings forming, and try to keep solid wood furniture away from direct heating vents or radiators, since constant heat cycling is one of the biggest causes of joints loosening over time and finishes cracking prematurely. When choosing glue, remember that a standard PVA-style wood glue is fine for the vast majority of joint repairs, but always check the label for one specifically designed for wood rather than a generic multi-purpose glue, since wood glue is formulated to flex slightly with the timber as it moves. On sanding grits, as a simple rule of thumb, coarser grits around 80 to 100 are for removing old finish or leveling significant damage. Medium grits, 120 to 150, are for general smoothing and leveling repairs. And fine grits, 220 and above, are for final preparation before finishing. Jumping straight to fine grit on rough or damaged wood will waste your time and your sandpaper. On indoor versus outdoor furniture, the finish requirements are genuinely different, not just a matter of preference. Indoor pieces can use oils and waxes that offer a beautiful natural look, but limited weatherproofing. Outdoor furniture needs a finish specifically rated for UV and moisture exposure, or it will fail within a single season, no matter how well the repair underneath was done. Picture that table as it stood at the start. A leg hanging at a slight angle, visibly cracked at the joint. 2 pale, cloudy rings staining the surface where mugs had sat too long. Years ago, by previous owners who probably never gave it a second thought. A raised, curling patch of veneer near the corner that caught on anything that brushed past it. And over the whole surface, a dull, tired sheen, the kind that makes a beautiful piece of solid oak look, at a glance, like something not worth keeping.